Good evening. Thank you for coming out this evening on a Friday evening to the Zuckerman Museum of Art. We are so pleased to have with us Donté Hayes. I am Cynthia Norse Thompson, the Director of Curatorial Affairs, and I welcome all of you following the lecture to stay. We'll have refreshments, and then the Edgewood String Quartet will be playing, and they're really wonderful. I would like to introduce the Director of the School of Art and Design, who will introduce Donté. Please welcome Gio Sepp.
16-point font, 1.25 magnifiers. That ought to get me going. You know, it's absolutely no surprise to see Donté Hayes' name on a screen. I think those of us who worked with Donté when he was a student here knew that he was going to be something very special. One of the kindest men I've ever met in my life. Totally genuine, a work ethic that was astonishing. And you know, as professors in a long career, we're really blessed when we get to work with students who challenge us, who get us to think, who make us be better workers, better artists, better people. And knowing Donté's story and having been the director here for a number of years, it's an absolute and total privilege to welcome him back. It's no surprise to me that when he was graduated from KSU, he received a full ride to the University of Iowa for graduate school, one of the best graduate schools in art and design in the country. And I think each of us knew and admired him and really understood that something special was going to happen for Donté because he was going to make it happen. And it's that kind of student that makes our jobs so much fun, so rewarding, and to have Donté come back and visit with us as a Windgate Foundation artist is truly astonishing. We're trying to work our way through understanding what the Windgate Foundation program is. Donté has been a saint as we've tried to work through it. Hopefully we have a better understanding as we move forward. But I just want to talk a little bit about Donté here and everything he's done in just a matter of 4, 5, 6 years. Hey, 5 years. 5 years. It's a lot of stuff for 5 years. So Donté Hayes was graduated summa cum laude from Kennesaw State University here. Right, I say that every day. With a BFA in ceramics and printmaking and with an art history minor. Donté received his MA and MFA. I didn't know you did both, that's awesome, with honors from the University of Iowa and is the 2017 recipient of the University of Iowa Arts Fellowship. Wow. I love that school, by the way, great facilities. Recent art exhibitions include group shows at the Trout Museum of Art in Appleton, Wisconsin, the Newark Museum of Art in Newark, New Jersey, and the 2021 Atlanta Biennial at the Atlanta Contemporary in Georgia. Donté's artwork has been presented at the 154 Art Fair London, Design Miami, Florida, and a solo presentation at the 2021 Armory Art Fair in New York City. That one just blows me away. His work is included in the permanent collections of the Renwick Gallery of the Smithsonian Museum of American Art in Washington, D.C., the Gibbs Museum of Art in Charleston, South Carolina, the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston, Texas, the Newark Museum of Art in Newark, New Jersey, the Stanley Museum of Art, Iowa City, Iowa, Des Moines Art Center, Des Moines, Iowa, and the Mint Museum in Charlotte, North Carolina, among others. Donté is a 2019 Ceramics Monthly Magazine Emerging Artist and Artaxis Fellow. Donté has also been in residence at the Bemis Center in Omaha, Nebraska, Township 10 in Marshall, North Carolina, Penland School of Craft, Penland, North Carolina, the Hambidge Center, Raymond Gap, Georgia, Haystack Mountain School of Crafts, Deer Isle, Maine. That would be pretty. Haystack Mountain School of Crafts, Deer Isle, Maine, and Watershed Center for Ceramic Arts, Newcastle, Maine. Donté is the grand prize winner of the Coined in the South 2022 exhibition at the Mint Museum. He is also the 2019 winner of the 1858 Prize for Contemporary Southern Art from the Gibbs Museum of Art. Donté Hayes is currently represented by the Mindy Solomon Gallery in Miami, Florida, and I've got to tell you, it's with humility and exceptional pride that I welcome Donté Hayes to the podium. Thanks, Donté.
Thank you. All right, y'all. Thanks for coming. Everybody hear me? Yeah. Let's have some fun tonight. I'm going to not be boring, because I know a lot of times you go to these talks are always boring. And it ain't about that, you know? It's about to represent KSU. All right, so those who don't know, I'm a big comic book nerd, sci-fi nerd, you know, all day, you know? Growing up, I'm dyslexic, so I had a hard time reading, so comic books was the thing that helped me learn how to read. You know, I was always made fun of because I was like slow in reading, you know, which is interesting that now, you know, I got almost straight A's here. So like, you know, I can read without just like graphic artwork. But for me, Black Panther was the thing. And like growing up though, everyone used to make fun of me that I like Black Panther. Like now everyone's like, Black Panther's cool. You know what I mean? But back in the day, he wasn't cool. Everyone was saying that he was like a phony Batman, you know? But like, I have like Black Panther all the way from #1, from the 1960s ones now. The Jungle one, when they were called Jungle ones, way before the real original ones. Yes, yes, yes. From #1 all the way to #22, and then it switched to another artist. And I have them like in a nice little seal, you know what I mean? And my brother used to make fun of me that I would like read it one time and then I would make notes because I didn't ever want to open up the packaging again because I knew one day it was going to be worth something, right? So growing up, like I said, I love sci-fi, and Fahrenheit 451 was like one of the first books that like when I was in 6th grade, we had to read, and it was like the first book that actually was like I actually could read because it was something that was interesting to me. And I was like telling my mom and dad, I was like, where are the Black people in the future though? And that's when they were like, do you know who Octavia Butler is? And I was like, no, who's that? They never taught us in school. So like my parents were always like teaching us. We would always every summer go to different museums, and I'm thankful for that. Back in the day, we were always like, we wanted to go to Six Flags. You know what I mean? But while all the kids were like going to Six Flags, we were going to like, you know, Martha's Vineyard. We were going to the Great Black Wax Museum in Baltimore. You know, they were taking us to all these great places to learn. So I'm thankful now that I know Octavia Butler when I was very young. And lastly, Metropolis was a big deal to me. And it's like interesting because I feel like Metropolis and Fahrenheit 451, like we're kind of living that now. Look, we got the big wall screen, you know, like we're being told what we think through the screen. So like, look what happened with Zoom and things of that nature. So, and lastly, Star Trek Next Generation was like the show I watched growing up. And for me, we always used to say Worf was like a honorary Black brother, you know what I mean? Even though he was a Klingon, we still felt like he was Black. Growing up in Atlanta, so it's like, ever since I was 18, I never really worked. I always worked with my art. So I used to do poster designs and things like that for like Crisscross, and then I met Little John and all of them from that. So I would do some kind of posters or T-shirts and things of that nature. So I always made money on my art, you know. I made a lot of money making just, you know, graphics even before I even came to KSU. And I helped with AT Aliens Outcast album. So thirdly, I'm very interested in all history, but, you know, art history. Like I said, I have an art history minor here. And I got an MA at Iowa. And one of the reasons why I went there is because of their art history, African art collection they have. And we'll go into that. African art's not African art. It's actually heirlooms, but we'll get into that. So for me, growing up, it was always like messed up when I would always like, when we would get to like the history of enslavement, and they would say like, oh yeah, you know, they were African and they were slaves and then they went to the New World. And then the first thing in my mind when I was young was like, Africa is not a country. You know what I mean? Like, why are we even starting that way? I want to know, like, what kind of food do they eat? You know? What kind of clothes do they wear? What kind of houses did they have? What kind of parties did they do? You know, it was never even taught as if they were human beings. You know, we didn't even know what area of the continent of Africa they were from. Most likely they were from West Africa. And so that always bothered me. Like, no one could teach me that. I had to learn this stuff on my own, from my own parents and other things. But in school, you don't learn that. Even an undergrad, you don't really talk about that. And I know, I went here. You know what I mean? Keeping it real. Yes, this is being taped, you know? So we gotta keep it real in everything we do. You know, even here it's not being taught right. So, this is interesting to me because this is a part of my research. And this is an Ife Head from the kingdom of Yoruba. In 1910, a German explorer named Leo Frobenius ended up like finding these, digging these up, a bunch of these brass heads, and which now you will say is Nigeria. And the first thing he thought was like, this is from the lost city of Atlantis. He couldn't even think that, he actually thought that you're in Black Africa and you're thinking Greeks made this beautiful natural thing. And that was deep to me when I learned about this. We talked about this in a bunch of African history classes that I took at Iowa. And I was like telling people, and like the professors there were like shocked that I knew about this. They were like, and I was like, how do you know all this? Because I learned on my own, you know? So from that, this is one of the pieces represent Professor Dibble. I made this during my time here. And like, this one's called Universal Frequency. So studying that concept about like the idea of something beautiful like that. So let's go back. So when people see these lines, the first thing that, who don't know, they'll say, oh, that's talking about scarification, scarification. Wrong, wrong. Those lines are the representation of the more lines, there's the wisdom, as well as the idea of power and abundance that that person had. So the more lines you have in your outlining represents that. Same thing with the neck. And you see the lines in the neck, people say, oh, that's talking about elongating the neck. Wrong. That's not about that either. That's showing respect because of the lines. So from there, I took it formally. And I was like, see those lines? That kind of reminds me of like a light bulb. You know, the light bulb bottom? And the head kind of reminded me of like the bulb shape. Made me think of like, I was being enlightened by learning the truth. Because I found out on my own, you know? So I made this piece, I guess it was 2014. I ended up showing this with Jeff and Professor Schur's art gallery they had for students at the time. It was the first time I actually showed this piece, and I made it here. And I call it Universal Frequency because I was thinking about how hip hop is like the new frequency. And like that frequency, like all objects have resonance. And that always stood to me, even now when I'm starting to make ceramics. At this time, I wasn't making any work in clay. Never even touched clay at this time. So here's another print that I made here. It's called Beacon. And I think this piece is actually in the Southern Graphics collection. And it's a lino cut. And I was just thinking about, even though I've never been to Africa yet, and I will be there probably next year doing research in Ghana, because the museum, the Institute Museum of Ghana recently bought my work like last month. So I'm going to be going there to see it, so. And so this piece was like speaking about the idea of the beacon, that like hip hop has like brought like people together, but also like the African diaspora through like, you know, pixels have brought us all together. So this is like some of the works that I made while I was in Jeff and Keith Smith's class. And at the time, I was making a lot of those Yoruba heads and boom boxes, and like they actually could play music. You know, I would get my phone and it would be on like on Bluetooth, and everybody would be like, what's all that noise? And it's like, it's coming from that ceramic piece, right? So it was like, that's how I got into grad school, because I went to go to Iowa because of Elizabeth Catlett. She was my favorite artist ever since I was 10 years old when my parents took me to see her show. And she was a sculptor as well as a printmaker. And so it was funny because when I told Jeff that I wanted to go to Iowa, he was like, that's a good school, but you don't know enough about ceramics. So I don't know if you're going to get in. But I was like, hopefully I did, and I ended up getting in for ceramics. That's what I wanted to do, so I could do both. Because if I get into then I could do whatever I want, you know? So I was a ceramics 1 teacher, and then also I was a tech in the print lab there. So from here, I had went to Europe, and I guess it was like 2016, 2015, something like that. And I was really struck by when we went to France and saw the stained glass windows. And for myself, where everybody was like in awe, I was in awe of this. Can anyone see that shape? That shape to me reminded me of this, the Middle Passage shape. So we go back and forth, look at that. That's what I was thinking about, you know? Because like even in the iconography, they were still thinking that they had the right to enslave people because of their belief in God. And I thought that was deep, that even in their ways that they made their ships even related to that. So I made these pieces while I was in Jeff's class. And for me, I feel like this was the best piece I probably ever made, not just like now but even then. And I did get to show it here in the Vision Show in the back, in the back. Yeah, funeral. And I call it A New Frontier. And I was going back thinking about Star Trek, Star Wars, and which is cool, like a lot of it is not even clay, you know? So I'll have a smaller shot. Like these little heads are clay. And the Coca-Cola crate is a representation of when I went to Europe, and even when in 2016, when we went to Cuba, you can only find like Coke, you know, and like Coke is it. So I was thinking in like Atlanta is where Coke was. So it made me started thinking about like how we do commodities, because you know those beautiful people, they were seen as commodities. And so like I wanted to change that and make a new frontier. Like what if it was an alternate universe that they were able to get into a spaceship and go to a new place. So like go back here, so like the Coca-Cola crate and then those heads, and then the top is actually clay, but the wings are like pink foam and things of that nature. And then the hair, which you can see, I lost all my hair for that project. That's what you do for art. That's what you do for art, right? So that was like a representation of like, you know, your DNA. You know, that's how you find yourself. Like those NCCIS shows. I love those shows because like that's where you find people, through the follicles of hair. So I was saying that like even though I'm not from Africa, I'm from the diaspora, those things are still in me. So I realized that was what I was really trying to make, right? Like in that summer of 2017, before I went to Iowa. I realized like, oh man, I was really talking about the home the whole time, even though like, what is a home? You know, like even because like, what is us? We are our vessels. We are a home. And that started making me think like more critically about the inside of us. So, like I said, at Iowa, I took a lot of African art classes, history classes. And one of the things was about the Obas, the kingdom of Benin. And it was interesting to me that I didn't even know that you can trace all the beginnings of those Obas from the beginning all the way to now. Just like if you were doing that from Augustus Caesar all the way to Constantine. You can know who was a good Oba, who was a bad Oba, how much money they made, who got lost. I didn't even know that you can find all those things out. You can find it on their crest. But for me, I was also interested about the formal look of a king. This is a king that I didn't know what kings look like, you know? And why I was so interested in that is because when I went to Iowa, I didn't really feel welcome there. When I was there, I was the only black person that I even knew around. You know, in my cohort, there was only 5 black people in the whole cohort of 28 people. So it's like, so think about 5 black people walking the streets of Iowa City. And we're not ever if we were walking together, it was like a lot of black folk. You know what I mean? So it was like, whoa, where'd they come from, you know? So I always felt like I always had to be the black person for that person. You know what I mean? No matter what they thought a black person was, that's who I was, even if it wasn't me. That's what they tried to treat me. So I kind of felt like I was an Afronaut there. So I started making this work. That was the beginning work before you started to see the work that got me here. And I was like researching about, you know, astronaut helmets because it kind of reminded me of an astronaut helmet, you know? And then I was thinking, that's crazy. That king could have been treated with a slave face mask, you know? Because, like, that's what happened on those ships. So I put all those things together to create these pieces. And I called them True King series, the Afronauts. And they're ceramic underglaze glaze. And I thought these were like a way to like show power and comic book like heroes in the same way. And I made a few of these, but I kind of felt like that was just like not really pushing what I was really thinking, because like once you see that, you're done. You see this figure, okay, good, bye, next. You know, you're not thinking on your own. And I wanted to make something that actually spoke about welcoming in a way that, instead of it about trauma, because I'm not about that. You know, I'm not about like it's either trauma or black joy. You know, I'm a human being. I'm everything. You know what I'm saying? Like a person might think I'm the nicest guy. Maybe I might not be to somebody else who treats me bad. You know what I mean? I'm a full person. I'm not just black joy or trauma. I'm sad, you know? And I'm kind of tired of that when I see that in art. And I always fight that. So I continued to take a lot of more art history classes. And at Iowa, my first year, I didn't really make that much work. I only made about like 6 pieces, which is funny. I made more pieces this week in ceramics than I made actually my first year at Iowa. When Gio brought up that I got the Iowa Arts Fellowship, the reason why that's important, because it only is given out to like 5 people in all of arts, not just in ceramics. It's in ceramics, you know, print, performance, video, dance, you know, graphic design, 3D design. Only 5 people get it. So it's a major thing, and you get double money, and you don't have to teach your first year. So I used that year to study, take a lot of art history classes, learn about clays, fire my own work, you know, figure out the kind of things that I wanted to talk about that wasn't cliche. So like I said, I was taking a lot of art history classes, and what struck me was the initiation rites. So like how they would do in West Africa, in like Burkina Faso or Nigeria or Ghana, they would have groupings. So like if, you know, the 3 and 4 year old boys would be together, the 3 or 4 girls would be together, and they'll grow up like a cohort to learn and grow with each other. I thought that was pretty powerful, how like that's how the community grows. So you learn from each other throughout the times. And throughout those times, you have different initiation rites. So like those things that we see at the High Museum downstairs of the African Art Collection, or you go to the Stanley Museum, which is in Iowa, which is like the #1 African art collection in North America, which is in Iowa, which is kind of, and we'll talk about that another time. I have issues with that. But so they don't see that as art. These are heirlooms. They take care of them. A person in their home takes all the time. They're only the one that is allowed to touch that mask, to paint that mask over each year for each initiation rite. And that's a powerful thing. And it reminds me, like, okay, what is that like? First of all, when you have an initiation rite, it's just like if we were about to go to see a Georgia football game. Everyone's wearing red and black. Or we're going to a Kennesaw State game. Everyone's wearing yellow and black. We all know what they're doing. They're going to see a football game. They know what is happening at that initiation rites. You know, this is not something that is like foreign. So I was interested in the different costumes and how they use raffia in different ways and hair in different ways. So like even in their masks, even in their breastplates, even in the way that they have their houses. And so I was taking that idea and then flipping it. So what about those who took them? What was the colonial things that they were wearing, you know? And that raffia kind of also reminded me of the ruffled shirt. of the colonial garb. And then it also reminded me of hair. And for me, hair is like a personal thing, not just like a cultural thing. My mom, she has mental health issues, and she actually takes her hair out, a part of it. And when I say this, people are like aghast. It's not something negative to me. It's not a negative thing. It's a beautiful thing, because at least I know when she's at home, she's safe, you know? So like when I was younger and I would like play basketball, and then the team would come for like pizza at our house, and they would see like hair in our kitchen, and like some of the, my fellow friends would be like, ah, man, there's hair on my food. And I was like, that's no big deal. You know, it's my mom, she's here, you know? So I always think of that as a welcoming thing, not a negative thing. But also when you think about hair, it also reminds me of waves, the waves of the music I listen to, the waves of the ship going through from Africa to the New World. So here's some pots that I would actually study. And at Iowa, you could just like call them up and say, hey, I would like to come to the museum and see these pots. And while I was there, when I graduated in 2020, right before I graduated, they asked me to do a commission piece there to make a piece for their new museum that just opened in August. So last summer, I came to where they were having all of their collection at the Figge Museum, and I went through all their work on the PDF, and they brought like 7 works for me to look through. So this is how I make the work. I should have brought one of my needle tools to prove it to everyone. 2 weeks ago, I was at Harvard, and everyone was trying to tell me that I use a 3D printer. I have a special, you know, needle tool that, you know, Diamond Tool gives me. I'm like, nah, just a regular needle tool that I got in 2014, the first class I ever took. I still got it. It's bent up, but I still use it, you know? So this was at Township 10, and if you're a ceramic artist, you should definitely apply here. I've been invited there 2 times, and they actually invited me again. I did a talk for them in Asheville. It's like a beautiful place where you can just make work, and you don't have to be a ceramic artist. But I always bring in the ceramic people because it's the one place where you're by yourself. And I feel like if you're by yourself making the work, you can't fake anymore, you know? Because other people are like, oh, what you making? Oh, that's tight. No, there ain't none of that. You're with yourself and the clay and the environment that you were, all those people, those Cherokee that were on that land, you feel them. It ain't no like, we're gonna talk about diversity and we're gonna talk about this is Cherokee land. None of that garbage. It's real stuff happening there. So I always represent Township 10 because of what's going on there. And if it wasn't for them, I made the work that I did at the Armory that sold in 2 hours, work that I made there. So now let's talk about the work. We got to the work, yeah, we got to the work. I told you this wasn't gonna be boring, I told you, you know? So as you know, I love Dr. Who. It's my favorite show, and it should be for everyone, you know, here. And if not, you gotta go watch. And like I said, when I went to IU, I always felt like that was weird to me, that I had to like perform. I never perform. I'm who I am. Like this is how I always was. You know, Professor Dibble knows that. Gio knows that. I was loud. Hope knows that. But the Dalek was the one thing that made me think about like the visual language I wanted, because they were like exterminate, exterminate, exterminate. That's how they talk. And for those that don't know, they're the antagonists for Doctor Who, who's a time space lord. And they would go through time and space to destroy other worlds and times because they thought that they were the hierarchy, the best culture. And I thought that was like how I kind of felt when I was there. Like it was always like I had to be someone else's culture. Like I had to deny myself. So I was like, let me take that bulbous shape, because that bulbous shape was like so like real referencing the Dalek. But it also to me references a stress ball. You know, because like when you pull the stress ball, it also reminds me of a Dalek. So it's like the opposite. So like when you're going through stress, you don't have to, this is just me personal, but you can like, for instance, I was bringing this to Jeff. What if you're in a business or a board meeting and someone says something that is like misogynist, and you're in the board meeting, you're a part of the board, and you don't say nothing? Do you know how your stress is feeling because you didn't say nothing? You're bull. You're phony. Because then you go after, oh, man, I heard what they said. That was crazy at the meeting. It's already too late. You know, let's keep it real. It's already too late. So don't even do that. That's a waste of our time. So if you hear something that ain't good, you just need to speak up. Because if the good people ain't speaking up, we ain't good people. We ain't good people. Did you hear that? All right. This is real talk. This is what my work is about, real talk. Not like some fluffy stuff, even though my work is fluffy. See, I told you it's going to be fun. So actually, I see the work like a Lego brick, and some of the work, like they're not rounded, they're flattened, because I see like I'm world building. But I'm not world building as in like architecture of a building. I see us as human beings. Yo, what's up? Yeah, we're in here. You know I got to do that. You know I got to do that to you. I know, right? I couldn't let her. She knows you know I love you, But yeah. So it's like great to see good people here. You know, that was amazing. One of my last professors here. She even came and visited me in Iowa, so that was cool too. We had a good time. But anyway, so like, so the Lego brick is like an idea of like, I'm not saying this work because like a lot of times when people say, oh, you're alluding to the black body. Yes, but I'm not talking about it outerly. I'm talking about internally, the inner body that no one talks about. Just like how I said, like no one was talking about what kind of food they ate on those ships, what kind of shoes they wore, because you know they were probably cool like sandals. You know what I mean? We had Air Jordan, so you know they made something cool there. You know what I mean? But we never talk about the inner, inside black folk. We never talk about the inside. We always talk about us as commodity or workers, you know, and things of that nature. I'm trying to flip that. So my first piece I made in this series that brought me here, it's called Dalek. And like I brought all those things together, and I was thinking about the idea. At the time, I was researching the history of the pineapple. And for most people who don't know, the pineapple is a representation, symbolism of welcoming and hospitality, correct? But most of us think that that comes from, you know, Hawaii. It does not. It's a colonial thing, you know? And Hawaiians actually never heard of a pineapple until the 1880, when the Dole Pineapple Company came. So the reason why we even get the idea of hospitality and welcoming from a pineapple is from King Charles II. He was called King Pine. Yes, you can look at my thesis and get all the information. I have all proof. Go look it up, Iowa thesis paper, Donté K. Hayes, Welcome to Afro City. And then you'll get all the information. But I'll give you the smart notes. So he would like say, man, I want pineapples everywhere. So I want to go get those pineapples. So where are pineapples really come from? They really come from South America. And then they were moved to the Caribbean through the natives of South America. And then they would trade it back and forth for beer, money, and food. And then it ended up going through the colonialism through South Carolina and southern Georgia. But how we get the idea of welcoming from it, which is really deep, they would put a pineapple on a spike at the docks, loading docks of where the new shipment of enslaved Africans would come. So when that boat would come to that loading dock, a new shipment would come. And then that's what they were saying. So they would put a pineapple there to respond to the welcoming, because they knew in 7 days it would start to go bad. So that's how we actually get the idea of welcoming. It comes from that. And that's what I did for my research that first year at Iowa. So I used all that to create this piece called Dalek, because it was like the idea of the exterminate, and also the idea of the stress ball, and also like, how do you create a place where you weren't supposed to be? You know, we're now in 2022, and I'm going to keep it real. The reason why we still have democracy is because of black people, you know, and black women. So we need to represent that too. We're talking real stuff here. So this piece here I called Withstand, and I was thinking about the idea of in Rome, the triumphal arch, when you would walk through. And I thought that what is the most powerful arch? Our bodies is an arch too. So we can withstand any kind of issues if we really believe that what we're saying is right, even if it's gonna hurt us. Because at the end of the day, we gotta stand for what's right. So this piece is called Clapback, and it's funny because this is at the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, and the curator was like, can I ask you, we were debating about what this work means, and can I see if we are right while you were making it? I was like, yeah, sure. Is it saying that clap back, someone says something crazy and you clap back at them? I was like, yes, you're correct. That's exactly what I'm saying. So like that, the way that our bodies like snap right back when we hear something crazy, you know what I mean? So I was like thinking about, like, I heard a lot of crazy stuff while I was at Iowa, you know, and a lot of times I spoke up, sometimes I didn't. And then it made me think, like, I need to speak up every time, you know? Because, like, other people are feeling hurt, and I didn't say nothing. So this is not just about me being hurt. I was hurting other people by not saying nothing. So now I always speak. So now we're going to move on, and I was, like, thinking about coral because of those beautiful Africans on that ship. And then they were maybe got thrown overboard, or they died and they had to be thrown overboard, or they threw themselves overboard because they didn't want to be a part of that world. And the High Museum came to my mind. And I love the High Museum. And it's crazy because, like, all museums, the first thing you do is you go to the 5th floor, or whatever, the highest floor, right? And then somehow they take you to the gift shop. You know, they always want their money. I don't know how they do it, but they just find their way. Get you the gift shop. ZMA, you might need to find a way to do that. Yeah, get yourself a gift shop, you know? But anyway, so when I went there, I was like, man, I used to always see like the geodes, you know what I'm talking about? And then it'd be right next to coral. And so like, I know I'm dumb, but I didn't realize until like a few years ago that coral isn't white. Coral, when it's white, is dead. And that was deep to me. You know what I mean? I did not know that. And I feel stupid that I didn't know. So I did a lot of research when I was in Iowa about that. So it made me think about this piece. That's why I made this piece. And it's porcelain, and it's called Speak. Oh yeah, I want to go back a little bit. With these works, they're all a clay that I had my own recipe that I made, and it actually fires black. This isn't glazed or anything. So when you see it, it'll look like a brownish clay, but once it's fired to at least cone 1 for those ceramic people, it'll turn black on its own because of the manganese and iron. But yeah, so this is porcelain. And so I was playing on the idea of like, when we always see something porcelain, we think of, you know, abundance and like richness and purity. And I'm playing on the opposite of that, you know, because what happened in 2020 of like Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and so many other people from the past that died. And the only time you could ever see a black person's humanity is through death. So that's the reason why I call it Speak. And that's the reason why like the tops kind of have a look like a subwoofer. And like I said, the flatness, so it kind of has like the Lego brick. So it's like saying that that's the foundation of black people's, and only in their death is when you find beauty. So I made this piece actually at Township 10. And this piece is called Reboot. And I heard a lot of people during that time in 2020 talking about, we're in a new like era, you know, we're in a new change because of, you know, BLM and so many people. Man, that's bogus. My mom was in the 60s, so she saw all this. So we shouldn't be talking about this as something new. You know what I mean? So I called it a reboot. And if you ever like, because I'm not a computer person, but you know, when you're told to do all these things to reboot your computer, you know what happens? It don't work right, right? Something happened, it don't work right. So when you see this in real life, it's like superly shaggy. And I'm like purposely showing that like the idea of like, it doesn't really work, you know, even though it's rebooted. So reason why I use a lot texture in the word because I want something that's welcoming. I feel like the hierarchy of art needs to stop. You know, like it's museum, this, you know? And like, I never felt like, you know, my friends didn't think we should go to museums. And I would tell like them that, oh man, my parents take us to museums all the time. What? How? You know, you're not, you know, you don't know anything about that, you know? So I want to like destroy that. So I wanted to make something that looks welcoming that all people will want. It's not about being black, it's about being human. So, like I said, I took a lot of African art history classes, and this is from the Boa people in Burkina Faso, which is like right next to, it's in West Africa, right next to Nigeria and Ghana and Ivory Coast. And they have these checkered plank masks. And if you know anything about these initiation rite, the black is a representation of enlightenment, and the white is a representation of chaos and out of knowledge. So they have this initiation rite that you move and you get out of your own world and you become a part of the community, that you're no longer living in chaos, you're living in enlightenment. And they say black is enlightenment, which I think is deep, that we never hear that in America. We never hear that, we hear the opposite. So the also the zigzag pattern, the mountain pattern is like a representation of going up the mountain, getting knowledge, and then taking it to your people, and then doing that back and forth, back and forth. But it's also speaking to the idea of the genesis of the snake, and they believe that's how the world began, through a snake going up and down from heaven back to earth. So I made this piece called Zig Zag. So I used that same technique and just made a zigzag pattern onto a very minimal form. And I recently made this for commission at the Willen Museum. And I was thinking they were just gonna buy this. I made like 6 works. They ended up buying all 6 of them for their collection recently. And it's an amazing museum. It's all contemporary. All the work that they do is contemporary. So it's in upstate New York. And this piece is called Elevators for Outcasts, if anyone knows the song. And it's like a representation of like when people think that you're doing well, you know, like you're elevating, you're so good, you're up on another level. And I'm like, I still do everything like everyone else does. You know, I'm still gotta eat, still got, you know, so don't take me on this hierarchy. I'm just like everybody else. So that's the reason why I made this piece. And here's another one called Patch, because it's the idea of those checkerboards patching who you are as a human being. So this piece here I showed at the Armory, and I was thinking about the Maasai warriors, where they have to go to the bush and like become, you know, from boys all the way to the man, and traditionally will have to kill a lion. But I didn't care about that part. I cared about like that form of the headdress in that head kind of reminded me of a womb. And that made me think of like, this is what we really need. We don't need a reboot. We need to start over. So I made this piece called Womb. And I feel like if we're really gonna change how we think, we need to start changing who we are inside first. If we're gonna change who we are inside, then we can do that outwardly. But if we're not changing who you are as a person, why does it matter what's gonna happen? Because you're gonna keep doing the same problems over and over. The administration at colleges are gonna keep doing the same thing over and over. You know, the museums are gonna do the same thing over and over. You're gonna see the same things in politics over and over because no one's changing the inside of who we are. So now, we're gonna have some fun again. John Stewart, Green Lantern. And Jane can attest to this. When I went to Hambidge, I had this. And you know, you can have that light on. You can have that flashlight, right? You need a real flashlight there. It's dark. It's dark. You know what I mean? You walk and I was like, boom, boom, boom. Hey, what did I hit? You know, am I right? Yo, it's black there. You need a real flashlight. So it made me think, I know, I'm a nerd, yes. So instead, I'm thinking about Green Lantern. Walking to my place where I was staying at Hambidge, I was like, man, I need to go get a flashlight, a real one. So it made me think about the idea of like, where's our light at? You know, like, can I create light anywhere? So I made this piece called Lantern. And it ended up showing at the Atlanta Biennial, recent one. And I was like thinking like, do black people are seen in that kind of light? Like we can bring light to the world in everything we do, not just in like music or art or in sports, but in just like being regular people, you know? Like if you didn't know me, I'm just a regular person. You would know that my work's in the Smithsonian. Could you see my light? And that's what I care about, like how you be a better person. So this is the piece that I ended up creating for the Stanley Museum in Iowa from all my research, and it's called The Guardian. And I call it Guardian because it's guarding all the artwork that is in the museum. And it's also speaking to those who are the docents. They have a responsibility to get it right when they come there. Be welcoming when they come there. Don't act like you're a big shot because you're wearing your black on today. You're the guardian. You're guarding something even more powerful than what we ever thought of. Because ceramics, when we're gone, it's still gonna be here. The reason why I love ceramics is because of all of the knowledge and the memory it gives. Because once it's fired, it's gonna be here forever. So we should guard how we talk to another, how we talk about art, and how we think about art. And so with that, I wanna say thank you. Peep my IG. I need some help, Hope. I need some help, Hope.